Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. Live from the bedroom of nerds, Matt and I are here today with some great content as always. But before we get started, for those who follow the social media page, just know that the list is finally complete and that the 16 team, or I guess individual player bracket of the individual players with the absolute worst fans, or stands as we like to call them, is finally here. So I will read the names and I will post the bracket later on this week, and we will start doing head-to-head matchups within the next couple of days. So here's a list of the players. LeBron James, pretty given. LeBron James.
Okay, we gotta stop that.
We go all day for that. Number two,
We could.
very common within the region that we are in, Lamar Jackson. Number three, also pretty given, Tom Brady. Number four, Aaron Rodgers. Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant, RIP Mamba, MJ, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Duke JJ Redick, not NBA JJ Redick, specifically Duke JJ Redick, Russell Westbrook. Shout out to a certain somebody on this one, who I will not mention, Odell Beckham.
He knows who he is.
He knows who he is.
He knows who he is.
Tim Tebow, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, and my favorite athlete of all time, Peyton Manning. So that is the list of the player stands. So
we're really about to end up with LeBron versus MJ in the finals, aren't we?
You know, I'm going to do my best to where we don't get a LeBron versus MJ in the finals, because I don't know if I can handle that much. We see it enough on social media on a daily basis over everything. I don't know if I can handle it in my poll. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to keep it as fair as I can, but with only so much I can do there. But
just say LeBron wins it, it's another Mickey Mouse ring, and people will avoid it.
People will actually break down my stats on why LeBron did not actually win this. Just like when they broke down the stats between MJ and LeBron in the new Space Jam movie, within the two Space Jam movies, I was like, what does any of that have to do with their legacies, at all? Stop it. Y'all just sound so goofy at this point.
And secondly, get a hobby, please.
Get a life. Do something.
Please.
Go do your laundry. Stay out of it.
Mow the lawn. Pet a puppy. Come on. Don't worry about LeBron's stats in Space Jam.
Just not Bean. You cannot pet Bean. Not after that.
Bean is exclusive.
Bean is his own. He is his own. Let's just say that. For reasons that I told Matt prior to getting on the podcast, Bean is his own. He is his own being. But before we get off in one movie tangent, I do want to start into our typical movie tangent of the day and tell Matt that I finally got my girlfriend to watch Godzilla vs. Kong,
which is a fine movie.
It is. But you know what? I almost had to end the relationship because she was cheering for Kong. I'm not going to lie.
This is like the new U of L UK license plate with a house divided, but it's King Kong and Godzilla.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I could have dealt with that, man. I'm sorry, but I know I get not everyone is as big of a fan of Godzilla as I am, but if anybody who's seen King of the Monsters or Godzilla 2014, the first two legendary movies that came out prior to this one, how in the world they thought Kong was going to win this, I have no idea. Come on, guys. And I think everyone's seen it by now that's going to see it. So I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but Jesus, I don't understand how people, I get it. Like my girlfriend said, Kong is likable. He's relatable. He has feelings. Well, guess what? Feelings only get you so far in a fight.
I've just never thought of King Kong as having feelings, but he did in Skull Island. Skull Island was a fun movie too. I really liked that one.
That was my least favorite MonsterVerse movie, was Skull
Really?
Island. I like Kong. I mean, I have nothing against Kong. I'm just more of a Godzilla fan. But I actually like him. I just wasn't a fan of the movie.
I just love Samuel L. Jackson and John C. Reilly in that movie because it's like usually John C. Reilly is playing like the comedic character, and then this one in Skull Island he was like somewhat relatable, and then of course Samuel L. Jackson is Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson is not bad in anything. You can put
No,
Samuel L. Jackson in a commercial for Lucky Charms, and it would be the greatest commercial in the history of television because it had Samuel L. Jackson promoting Lucky Charms.
I'm just like hearing. I'm just hearing like the famous Samuel L. Jackson line, then talk about Lucky Charms. I'm just repeating that in my head right now.
Just imagine like the Jules character from Pulp Fiction promoting tricks.
Oh my god!
Tricks are for kids, and he just pulls out the gun and it's like, whoa, man, that actually works really well.
There's a lot of Marvel characters and Marvel actors in Skull Island.
Yeah,
You
because
got
it had
Captain
Tom
Marvel.
Hiddleston, Loki, Captain Marvel.
Yep.
Heck, even
Nick
John C.
Fury.
Reilly. Even John C. Reilly was in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in the first one. He was one of the Nova Corps,
Right.
I think. So yeah, wow, that movie is officially part of the MCU.
Officially. But you know what? And Kong can probably take a lot of characters in the MCU if we're being honest.
Well, not Ant-Man.
No, Ant-Man could
Ant-Man,
just grow to be Giant Man.
that would be a fun fight.
I would love to see that. I think that would be a better fight than Godzilla versus Kong.
That would be Thanos versus King Kong. What are we doing? I love it though.
I mean, we're talking about brackets and matchups and everything like that, like we do on most sports podcasts. So now we're just making the whole like movie cinematic universe
We
all
need
out brawl.
to do this. We need to do this.
You know what? Forget the stand bracket. Let's just do a cinematic universe all out brawl. Thanos versus Kong in one round. Giant Man versus Godzilla in another. Even though, sorry, Paul Rudd, you're getting destroyed in that matchup.
Captain America versus Jason.
Oh, poor guy. Poor Cap.
Alien versus Superman. Ooh, that would actually be kind of fun. Or Predator versus Superman.
I love Predator, but he's getting destroyed.
It would be kind of fun, though.
It'd be fun.
Maybe Alien versus Iron Man. That would be okay.
I feel like Predator versus Iron Man would be better.
Yeah, they both have those tech suits. That would be a pretty even fight.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just thinking all the possibilities we have now.
I know.
Heck, you could even have Bugs Bunny fight SpongeBob.
That I would pay to see that one. I would pay to see that one.
Because SpongeBob's proven that he's made of some kind of spongy material and he can take a beating. But Bugs Bunny is Bugs Bunny. So he would be trying to outwit him every chance he got. And SpongeBob's pretty dumb. So it would be a pretty fun fight.
I'd pay to see it.
Is this what you expected our lives to be at 25, debating whether or not SpongeBob and Bugs Bunny could have an even fight? Is this what we really expected?
Well, first of all, I wish I was still 25 for one. But yes, I think this is goals in life.
This is goals.
Bugs Bunny versus SpongeBob. And
I'm reading this after the show because I just want to see if I can set the world on fire.
Forget the next Logan Paul or Jake Paul fight. I want to see Bugs Bunny versus SpongeBob.
I would pay per view that. Absolutely. Or a tag team match with SpongeBob and Patrick versus Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny.
Oh, now we're talking into some 5-star categories right here.
We got some strategy going here too, because like who do you put in the ring first? Who can take a bigger beating?
Esports is a growing world. I think we can make it happen.
I think we can make this happen. The less is more fantasy sports combat network. I like it. We're gonna have to make this a thing. Mortal Kombat, but with fictional characters.
Well, technically, Mortal Kombat's fictional too. So.
Well, you know what I mean. Other fictional properties.
Right. I got you.
I mean, if Disney can do it, we can do it.
But before we get too far off track here, As we go from one international superstar, we're going to transition into the topic of today's show, which is the growth of international athletes in American sports. And Matt, I'm going to ask you a very vague but very important question.
Oh boy.
What do you think what is your overall thoughts on the impact that international players getting a resurgence in American sports?
It's like you said, that's a very vague question, and it's very hard to define the influence of. I mean, when we think about the big four American sports leagues, we have three of them that are beyond a doubt international ball games. The NBA, I mean, the MVP is Nikola Jokic. You've got Luka Doncic, who's burning it up. You've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who just won the NBA championship, also has a couple MVPs. Baseball has always, going back even into the 60s, had international players in it. You look at what Roberto Clemente did for Puerto Rico. You look at other guys, Roberto Alomar. You have a long list of guys from Latin American countries, Japan. I mean, Canada, even with Larry Walker and a guy we're going to talk about later that I'm going to enjoy making Les listen to me praise. He already knows what's coming. And hockey. Hockey, of course, Canada, the big one. But I mean, we have players from the Czech Republic. We have players from Russia. I mean, Alexander Ovechkin. You have players from all over the world in those three leagues. And I think the fact you can just see, like, in the revenue and the way the sports are presented, the international flavoring of those three leagues. And it's wonderful because it's just good to have a global game. There's more money. You're setting up more camps. You're having a bigger pool of players and a lot more talent. And you're introducing the game to a whole other generation through all kinds of different channels as well. I mean, people stay up until 3 a.m. in China to watch NBA basketball games. And baseball, I mean, we've had one of the biggest superstars of the past 10 years in baseball this year alone in Shohei Ohtani, and what he's been able to do in the AL as a pitcher and a hitter, and how much positive energy that's brought to the sport is incredible. That's what people really want to focus on. So I think it's great. And secondly, I think it's very, very weird that the biggest sport in America is the NFL. And there's no international like appeal to that at all. We do play the game in London, but I mean, when the game's in London, have you ever heard someone say an instant classic from London this morning? No, because it's always the Falcons or the Jaguars or somebody who's having a down year. And it just amazes me that the biggest league in America is the least international in terms of like player pool, talent, and really even reach. But yeah, it's always good from an economic standpoint, from basically any standpoint, a cultural standpoint. You'll have bigger standing to have your sport be an international ball game. And having these athletes from international countries inspires people. If some kid who was picked during a Quesarito commercial from Serbia can, make it in the NBA and become an MVP, so can you, child watching in France or child watching in Italy or child watching in China. You can do that as well. And I think it's great for economic opportunity. It's great for growing the sport. It's great for the American audience as well because they learn more about, different cultures. They learn more through osmosis than they do really through, years of schooling. They learn more from watching. So I think an international league is one of the best things you can have. And it's kind of surprising there are a couple leagues in America that really just don't have that type of footing.
I'll say with the NFL, I feel like football is just more of an Americanized sport. It is more viewed as like an American thing. And yeah, but I do agree at the same time though, every time we have like the game in London or the games in Mexico, a matchup between the Falcons and the Jaguars isn't really appealing because at least at the moment, that subject to change because of who the Jaguars just drafted. My child who is playing tonight, got to say that, had to throw that in there. But anyways, but there's not really a lot of star power for an international audience in a Falcons versus Jaguars game or whatever. I mean, obviously the Jaguars are the team that regularly plays in London, but Falcons, we just kind of threw a random team there. But I was reading a couple of statistics on northeastern.edu, and what was interesting to me is that the China sports marketing industry has grown to $15 billion, and just shows about the impact that American sports are having in even the Eastern culture nowadays is pretty remarkable. And it kind of dates back to when the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants of the world, and how their popularity became global, and how it inspired people from all over the country to want to play basketball. And the last thing I'm going to touch on before we get transition to like the next topic within this segment is this, and seeing the international dominance in American sports now. It reminds me of the 2018-19 NBA season, where the NBA champ, the city that they played in, was outside of the United States, the Toronto Raptors in Canada. The MVP was international. The defensive player of the year was international. I don't think the sixth man of the year, but pretty much every major award was won by an international player. And that is when it really struck gold to me of where the game is heading. And I love it, because to me, sports has always been a way to bring people together. And to see it done on a global stage is great for me. Great for all fans. But I think the main question I have now, and I think we might be thinking a similar thought process with this one, but it seems like we're seeing a lot more within the last 10 years. Why all of a sudden? Why not sooner?
That's a good question. I've thought about that myself, because like we've said, baseball, in terms of like having players with international backgrounds, that they've always, at least in my lifetime, been that way. And I think it's because baseball was kind of like the first, in a way, global sport. American GIs in various countries throughout World War II introduced baseball to countries that they were stationed in, and it spread like wildfire because it's an easy game to play. All you need is a ball and a stick. And it's like you said with basketball, we kind of fast forward a bit to like the 90s, 1992, especially with the Dream Team, how that team became like the biggest thing on earth. I mean, watching that documentary that I think HBO made a few years ago about them was really eye-opening, because, we know these guys were superstars. There's no doubt that a team with Michael Jordan and MJ is going to pack in thousands upon thousands of fans anyway. And then you watch the video and it's like they're the freaking Beatles. Like, even at the height of their power, there's people mobbing their tour bus. And, people had heard about the NBA, but they hadn't really seen these guys, to the point where I remember somebody said that, like, when they were playing Spain or Australia, that their own fans even turned against them and started rooting for Team USA because they were the Dream Team. Mm-hmm. And then you had that legend, and the way the NBA markets themselves with TV deals and with exposure and highlight reels, especially. I mean, just the advent of the internet alone for the NBA, where you could have, we think about mixtapes and stuff as like benefiting recruiting and things like that. It's also a great tool to get people to watch more basketball, because, if you see like top 10 NBA dunks and there's like some man doing a superhuman thing on it, you're going to click it because it looks cool. So I think that's a lot of part of it. As the world grows more interconnected via the use of technology, via YouTube, via Snapchat, via everything like that, it's really made sports and discovering new talent a lot more accessible, because back in the 70s and stuff, NBA players did get drafted based out of the Soviet Union, and then they just never played because of the Soviet Union's rules about that kind of stuff. And then, we get a little bit further along with player development. Maybe through FIBA, you'd see more and more guys. And now, basketball is just everywhere. It's easily seen. It's easily digestible in little packages. Basketball is the perfect sport for the internet age, because you really only have to watch the last 2 minutes of some of the games before they really get interesting. I know you and I aren't like that, but there are a lot of people around the world who just want to watch like the most exciting portion of a ball game. And like I said, baseball has just been around so long. Baseball's modern era starts in 1900. So people from America have been bringing that sport with them wherever they go. And it's usually countries that are fairly close by that get more baseball influence. And like I said, with the various military bases that the United States Army's built in various places around the world, right or wrong, there's been baseball. And these kids pick up on baseball because it's a fairly easy sport to play and it's a lot of fun. We think about baseball as this boring sport, but when you're a kid and you're playing baseball, it's amazing. You always have a good time. You just stand around talking to the guys. You leave sunflower seed to look cool, big league chew. It's a social event. So I think that's why, especially in the last couple of months, scouting has gotten better, number one. Technology has made sports more accessible and digestible to get kids interested in them. And sports are just designed for the internet age in some ways because you can make highlight packages. So those are my big three reasons why. It's just how interconnected the world is as compared to like the 90s even. How more connected we've become and how easily accessible and digestible sports have become to the modern audience.
No, I'm with you 100%. I think, especially with the resurgence nowadays, I feel like a lot of the kids that grew up in the internet age that were exposed to sports in ways they may have not been before, they're starting to get to that age where they become a professional age level. I remember in 2002 how big of a deal it was for Yao Ming to be the first overall pick in the NBA draft. I believe he was he was the first Asian player to be selected that high in the NBA draft in NBA history, and just the popularity he gained from that. And now, with that being said, with the internet and being in the technology age being a lot more exploitable globally, it's expressed a more of an interest for, like you said, these camps and all that to develop talent and scout and express, and also have more of a, trying to think what's the word I'm looking for. Oh, it's becoming more of a necessity to scout international players, because I mean, they in a lot of ways they play a different game, but in a lot of ways it's very translatable to the NBA nowadays. I mean, we're seeing now just how, I mean, in a lot of ways, some of these international prospects are a lot better than some of these American players. That's just the reality we live on. Like what you said earlier. I mean, the MVP of the NBA really the last three MVP winners, well, two players, but three MVP awards were international players, and Giannis and the Joker. And I think it all starts, I think you added it perfectly, because it all goes back to I think with basketball so much, it all goes back to the dream team and just the popularity they had when the Olympics finally allowed NBA players to play in the Olympic Games. And I think ever since then, it just kind of took off from there, and it's slowly, steadily grown. Now, if we can eventually see it in football, it would be great. We do. I think the closest thing we have to international play in the NFL are like Samoan players, really. But I mean, that would be the closest. But there's not really
I did some research into that, and most of them were players from American Samoa. But I did find like an example of a guy who played for the Cowboys who was from the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Igor Olshansky. I vaguely remember him playing. He was a defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like one of the few examples I could find of someone who wasn't from American Samoa or Tonga. Tonga was another one, the Polynesian countries, and basically the United States, and a couple Canadians.
That's why I said the closest, because I mean, like you said, even the American Samoas, but I mean, it's not really, even outside of continental US, you don't really see a lot of Alaskan or, I mean, Hawaii is the close. I mean, Hawaii, obviously you have the Marcus Mariotas of the world and the Tua Tagovailoas of the world, but outside of them, it's not even a strong presence in those states either. So football, obviously I think it would be cool to see it more globalized, but at the same time, I think to a certain extent, it'll always be treated as like America's baby.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a professional sports organization that took over a day of the week, the same, and not to quote the movie Concussion, but the same day the church used to own.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it, really. And, I don't really know about the NFL, what kind of international brand it would have, honestly. Mm-hmm. The game is just so brutal and so violent compared to basketball, baseball, soccer. Heck, the only one it's not comparable to is hockey when it comes to terms of just pure physical aggression, that It's one of those things that really only appeals to Americans in some strange way. The American sport that like has a little bit of bloodlust to it is football. And I don't really think that that kind of spirit would be, and I know they play rugby, but even rugby, as physical and tough as a game that it is, I've never seen a guy hit somebody in the head at 60 miles an hour with a helmet in rugby. So I think that I don't even know if the NFL would take off the way we think it would in an international market. I mean, we tried with that. What was that even called? Like the European NFL Network or the European NFL League with like the Amsterdam Admirals and stuff like that. And it immediately flopped pretty much. So I don't really know if the market for that is as strong as we think it is. That's why when they talk about people like moving the Jaguars to London, I know that's a popular theory. I just can't see that happening. Now I could see Mexico City just because it's close enough that people might watch it and it's not too drastic of a difference in time zone and atmosphere. But London seems like some kind of uncharted frontier to me. So I really don't know about the international capability of the NFL just because it's such a violent, draconian game in a lot of ways. So I'd be interested to see how the NFL and Roger Goodell, now that they're at their peak, their cultural zenith or cultural peak. I don't know if zenith's the right one. Did I use the right one? I don't know. Now that they're at kind of like their high point, if they're going to try and expand that market or whether they know that it's better to just stick to what you know, which is the fact you've got the entire lower 48 United States and all the major population centers under your thumb.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But I think you're more of a baseball guy. So I'll definitely ask, we've seen, I guess and I think within the last 20 years, a growth in the Japanese and China and the Asian markets in baseball. And what do you think contributes to that? One major thing that always usually contributes to star power, or to I guess fanhood is the star power. So like the big names. So I guess would it be fair to say the likes of like Ichiro Suzuki and Hideki Matsua kind of cater to that Asian market in baseball?
I think it would. Those guys, especially Ichiro. I mean, the Japanese Baseball League has been around or the NBL has been around for ages and eons. In fact, some people say that they have the true home run king of all time in Sadahara O, who, like a lot of American people, haven't heard of outside of a Beastie Boys reference, which I'm serious. He's referencing the lyrics to Hey Ladies by the Beastie Boys on Paul's Boutique. But he has like 800 career home runs. And he's not really that common in America because he played for I do not speak Japanese, so I'm going to do my best here. He played for the Giants of like Yoromi or something over in the NBL. And he's a monster. I mean, he's like a legend over there. But like I said, the American market really didn't have a Japanese like icon until Ichiro Suzuki shows up. And what a lot of people who liked Ichiro didn't know was that he was a 7-time All-Star and a series champion over in Japan before he even hit 3,000 balls in America. He was a Hall of Famer in Japan already. But what Ichiro Suzuki did for the game cannot be stated overall. And he came in at the right time to a very, very popular and very, very exciting Mariners team on the west coast of the country where there were many people of Japanese descent in that area of the country. And it was the match made in heaven. He's playing alongside Ken Griffey. He's playing alongside A-Rod. He's playing alongside Edgar Martinez. He's playing alongside some Hall of Famers when he's a Hall of Famer himself on an exciting team. And I mean, I don't have to tell you about the 2001 Mariners. I think they're the best team that never won the World Series, next to maybe the 1994 Montreal Expos, speaking of international baseball. But yeah, I think and then today you've got Shohei Ohtani, Hideki Matsui, who won the World Series MVP with some of those great performances against Philadelphia in 2010. I think I got the right team. It's always confusing to me. And the World Series all kind of blur together to me, and I hate that. But yeah, Hideki Matsui, especially, he broke into a giant market in New York and won them over immediately. And now the trend continues with Shohei Ohtani over in Los Angeles. another big market on the West Coast. We're a very diverse market where a lot of people with Japanese American descent are. I mean, he's a very popular player. And at the same time, we do have to acknowledge, going back to what you talked about with Yao Ming, we still have a long way to go with the way we address players like this. Because, I mean, I don't have to tell you twice that we've had recent controversies with Stephen A. Smith, of all people, who's concerned about Shohei Ohtani becoming the face of the game. And then more recently, Tigers' Jack Morris with his comments during a ball game. And you remember very well what happened with Yao Ming and Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get into that. It's horrible and shameful. And it's one of the few times I ever looked at Shaquille O'Neal and said, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. But we still have a long way to go when it comes to like relations in that sense. But just seeing players come into their own like that, I mean, watching them be successful is actually really cool because, the face of baseball may not be Mike Trout anymore. It may be Shohei Ohtani. And I think that's good for the sport because you're showing that your game is growing not only on a local level, but on a national level. And once again, that goes back to scouting. And like I said, Ichiro kicked in the door on that. When Ichiro was a success, we got a lot of players who were scouted more intently than they were before. And, that led to Hideki Matsui. That's leading to Shogo Akiyama now playing for the Reds. It's leading to a discovery of a new market. And I mean, and part of that too, if you want to go back even further, there was Hideo Nomo who was a pitcher. So, I mean, baseball has always kind of been at the forefront of that, but it really was the Ichiro Suzuki thing where there was like with the Ichi meter and all that kind of stuff that really set the ball in motion for that. And I think it's great. I always think it's great when you have a diverse ball game and you have an international ball game because you don't know the talent you missed out on when you're only focused on your own you're focused on your own country, basically. So, yeah, I would say that what really started that was Ichiro, and that led to better scouting and, like I said, snowball effects.
As a sports fan, you definitely like to see the best talent that the world has to offer and display. And the more globalized that we get in sports, the more I do believe we are getting the, without question, best talent on the floor at all times. And
yeah,
it also brings me to another point. I'm going to quote Carmelo Anthony and what he said to Makur Maker when he committed to Howard University, one of the first big-time recruits to commit to an HBCU. Sometimes it just takes one. Sometimes it takes that one player to shed the light for everybody else. And that we're seeing that a lot with international players. And my last thing before we get to our infamous top five at the end of the show, I really wish you were on the podcast. Loyal fans of this show will remember, and if you're watching this, you already know who you are. But a good friend of mine hopped on this podcast trying to debate on who is the better hitter all time, Ichiro or Pete Rose.
Oh God. Oh, that's a tough question. Because I like both guys. I mean, Pete Rose is a player more than a person. But that's a great question. And I really don't have an immediate answer for that because I respect both guys for what they did so much because it takes a lot of patience to get that many hits in Major League Baseball. And, we could debate who the hit king is between whether Ichiro's NBL hit should count or not. And, oh, wow, that's a great question. That's an amazing question. What conclusion did they come to?
Well, we all agreed to disagree on that one because, I think half the show said Pete, half the show said Ichiro. So I think it was pretty much an agree to disagree. But I mean, obviously, two great players. When on that show, if I remember correctly, I went as far as to say that Ichiro was the better player overall. But I do think, but I also said that Pete Rose was the better hitter, specifically.
I don't think that's unfair. I definitely think that when it comes to just being purely athletic and able to make some just amazing catches and speed, I would probably lean Ichiro. I would.
Not to mention his
I think
threat
that's
to
a
steal
totally
bases.
valid take on that.
Not to mention his threat to steal bases too. Like Just Ichiro was the total package, not just hitting.
Yeah. And I mean, neither guy was really a power hitter, so you really can't use that as a metric. I mean, Pete Rose only has 160 career home runs, so neither one really hit for power. They hit to get on base, which is great, which is what you should do in baseball.
Which is something that's missing now in the shift era, but that's neither here nor there. So
there is one guy who gets on base a lot.
And which guy are you talking about?
Oh, you'll see. Top five's coming.
Okay. All right. So now, as you said, the top five is coming in time for, I think, me, Matt, and everyone else's favorite segment of the podcast, our top five. So what we're doing today is Matt is going to name his top five current international baseball players, and I'm going to name my top five current international basketball players. Me having the more basketball savvy background, Matt having the more baseball savvy background. So I thought it was a little appropriate. And of course, we can't transition to talking about international players without talking about the international king himself, Godzilla, the man, the myth, the legend. Well, not really a man. He's a god amongst
Permian lizard.
The guy literally has God in his name. So, I mean, he's amazing. Not to be sacrilegious or anything, because I'm not at all. I'm just praising my childhood hero. So, but anyways, Matt, are you going first or am I going first?
How about you go first with the NBA, and then I'll try to wrap it up quickly with an MLB rapid fire.
I ain't got to wrap it up quickly. I think we could definitely take our time. We are definitely good on time, buddy. And I think this could make our top fives can make for such a good debate. So we can make some we have some good conversations just off our top five alone.
All right. Well, go ahead and list, and I'll prepare myself for questioning.
All right. So I'm going to start with number five. And I got the guy who is arguably one of the best defensive players in the NBA right now. Hell, he should have won Defensive Player of the Year just for shutting down the entire NBA. But all jokes aside, number five, I had to go with Rudy Gobert.
You went there. Oh.
It was funny. I was actually in the Sentinel News newsroom where my editor, Todd Martin, and I made that joke and said he should win Defensive Player of the Year. He shut down the whole league.
Oh, my God. You're not wrong, so I can't really argue with it, But
all jokes aside, Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players of his era, especially his interior defense. I think it's still even a fair question to say who is more valuable to the Jazz's success, him or Donovan Mitchell. I like Donovan Mitchell, but I think you cannot deny the impact that Rudy has on the game, whether it's rebounding or protecting the rim, blocking shots. The Stifle Tower himself makes his presence at number five. Number four, and many will argue should be higher on this list, but given his conditioning or his ability to stay healthy during his NBA career, has him this low on the list, and that is Joel Embiid. Look, when he is healthy and when he is engaged, because we have seen this a time or two within his NBA career, he just does not look engaged. But when he is one of the best players in the entire league. He is one of the most skilled centers we've ever seen. He does it on both ends of the floor when he's engaged. But his inconsistency staying engaged or staying healthy has him number four on this list.
That's fair.
Number three. And number three. And this is how you know this list is not biased, because I'm about to name my favorite player on this list, and that's Luka Doncic. Look, we talk about being who's the face of the league, yada, yada, yada. Luka Doncic, at only 22 years old, has already accomplished so much in his NBA career. Hell, he almost led Slovenia to a medal single-handedly. I think the next best player was either Mike Tobey or Zoran Dragic. If you ever seen the Jimmy Butler video,
Zoki. Yes, I have seen that one.
But no, Luka is the type of player who is a franchise changer. And at only 22 years old, he's only going to get better. And I have said this statement once, I will say it again. When LeBron retires, I firmly believe that Luka Doncic will be the face of the NBA.
I don't think that's unfair. I don't think so. Because it's LeBron, by the time LeBron retires, it'll be 2050 anyway. So
yeah, him and Brady are going to retire around the same time, and they're both going to have like their grandkids playing in professional sports. So
I wouldn't be surprised. He's just going to be lobbing balls to Bronny his final year in LA, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, he's going to be wheeling out on the court.
It'll be like the wheelchair game, but LeBron will play in the wheelchair. He'll just be like, I would actually watch that. LeBron James in a wheelchair with Anthony Davis, Bronny, and I don't know, Lonzo or Melo Ball against like the 2024 Brooklyn Nets. I'd watch that game.
Oh, I would too. And then the funny part is LeBron could be in a wheelchair and he'd still find a way to make an impact. Oh, God,
he would.
Gotta love that talent.
I can already speculate what your next two are, but I'm interested to see the order. So,
well, number 2, I'm going to go with the current NBA MVP, which is Nikola Jokic. I can't leave the MVP lower than 2 right now. He'd be number 1 if it weren't for who is number 1. And I think that just kind of gave it away who it is. But before we get into that, look, Nikola Jokic, this dude went from a guy who was drinking 2 liters of Coke a day to the NBA MVP. Just speaks volumes for the work ethic that he has and perfecting his craft. You know, a guy who doesn't blow you away athletically by any stretch of the imagination, but with fundamentals and basketball IQ is just second to none. And I will go also as far as to say that Nikola Jokic is the best passing big man of all time. I know you can make the case for Wilt Chamberlain and others like him, but Wilt Chamberlain with the Lakers, but no, Nikola Jokic to me is the greatest passing big man of all time. And a little fun fact, since 2016, with Nikola Jokic on the floor, the Nuggets are actually currently top 3 in offensive efficiency in NBA history.
Wow, that's impressive.
I'll give you a cookie if you can name the other 2.
I'm not getting a cookie, at least not right now.
Well,
maybe I'll get one.
The 7-second or less Suns, and then the current Dallas Mavericks led by my number 3 overall, my number 3 selection in this top 5, Luka Doncic.
That does surprise me a little bit because sometimes those Mavericks take some pretty bad shots if they're not Luka. I'm looking at you, Tim Hardaway Jr.
Well, that's kind of Tim's style, though. I mean, he's a gunner. He's a gunner.
I know, but still, he's not Steph Curry. Come on.
I know. Well, neither is Trae Young, but that's a topic for another day. But
he's balding.
I know he's balding. He makes my hairline look good.
Oh, that's a dig. All right. Well, let's hear your number 1 pick because I think I know who your number 1 pick is.
Well, I don't think you think. I think you know because it's kind of very obvious.
Hold on, let me guess. He plays or played for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's a big man. He's got some NBA championships under his belt. So your number 1 pick is Andrew Bogut.
I love it. Oh man, you know what's funny though is I'm going to show my age here real quick. I remember Andrew Bogut when he was playing for Utah in college, the Utah U.
Those were the days
when he won Player of the Year in college basketball. I'm showing my age with that one. But anyways, the real number 1 pick in my top 5 foreign NBA players. I mean, come on. The guy just won a championship. He just won Finals MVP. He has 2 MVPs under his belt. He's got 2 NBA Defensive Player of the Years under his belt. One of the most accomplished players at 26 years of age or older, or younger, and who many believe is now the current face of the NBA, even over LeBron James, and that is the Greek freak himself, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look, I have been accused of being a Giannis hater in the past. I don't know how you can hate Giannis at all, but I don't even know how that's possible. But you know what? I've been called. But the things that Giannis has just been able to do at this point in his career is just amazing. I can't, especially with this last championship run, I can't put him anywhere lower than number one. Let's just be honest here, guys. So that wraps up my top 5 international NBA players. So taking it from the top, we got Rudy Gobert, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and the Greek freak himself, Mr. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Mr. NBA champ himself, Mr. Finals MVP himself. And I cannot stress enough, because we have done a podcast on this before, it was not an insult when we did the Batman versus Robin debate. As just get Middleton is just the shot maker in the closing moments. That's all that is.
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's literally it. We all know Giannis is the star. Middleton's just the closing shot maker.
And because of Giannis's play, Middleton didn't have to make any late second baskets.
No, he still did, but I mean,
I know,
there wasn't
but
as much pressure. There wasn't as much pressure for it, but
yeah. But no, I think there's nothing I can add to that list, because I think you got the big 5 guys right. I mean, you could make an argument for Ben Simmons, but
actually, that reminds me, I do have my honorable mentions that I thought about putting in this list. So I had Pascal Siakam, Ben Simmons, Domantas Sabonis, son of Arvydas Sabonis, who we were robbed of his NBA career because of the Soviet Union not allowing him to play, but he was just a phenomenal player in his prime. And my last honorable mention, and it was so hard for me to not put him in this top 5, because I believe he is the most underrated player in the NBA right now. And he is the other Nikola Vucevic, who now plays for the Bulls.
Ah, yeah, that's a good one.
I have him on my NBA fantasy team every year, and every game he just racks up points for me.
You want to talk about being mad at someone? How mad should we be at the Magic organization for wasting most of his career?
I know. I mean, at least the Bulls now are actually trying to build something to be
They're
a
solid
team.
squad. They're gonna make the playoff. I think they are.
Yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs as well.
I think that they're gonna beat out Boston. I think they're gonna be like in that. They're gonna avoid the play-in. I think they're that good.
I don't know if they'll necessarily beat out Boston, but that might just be the Duke fan coming out of me, because I don't want to bet against Jason Tatum because of how good
I know.
he is.
See, but that's why I'm glad I don't have to worry about that.
But well, obviously, the only team I root for in the NBA is obviously my Miami Heat, but
and they'll be good next year too. So,
oh my gosh. And speaking of which, I saw, before we get to your baseball, your top 5 international baseball players, did you see where Kyle Lowry was ranked in point guards right now?
Yeah, I was surprised by that one.
Yeah, yeah. That's a conversation for another day.
Old doesn't mean they're bad.
Right.
We've already established this with LeBron. Just because someone is old, hi Bean, doesn't mean that they're bad.
He's making his second appearance of the podcast.
That's what we love to see, though. That's what the people really watch for.
They watch for Bean appearances. They're glued to their screens right now, just waiting for Bean.
This is it. This is the moment. And even though they might have struck out with that ranking of Lowry, I'll try not to strike out with this top 5 list. So
I love that transition, by the way.
You're welcome. So his list is very prisoner of the moment, and I have no problem admitting that, because I think it's fun. But here are my top 5 international baseball players of this moment. And at number 5, thank you, Bean. And at number 5, I got a guy who's kind of surprising, but I think he's going to turn out okay, because he's in a big market, and his personality, whether you like it or not, is going to catch on there. And at number 5, I have Javier Baez. More recently a Cub, now a Met, 2 big markets, and a guy who's got, because he was in the division so long, you and I might say he has a little bit of an annoying energy, but you've got to love that enthusiasm he plays the game with. And teaming him up with Francisco Lindor, who are both of those guys know each other pretty well. Both those guys play for the Puerto Rican national team. It's good chemistry, and I think Javier Baez is going to take off as a star. in New York, just like he was in Chicago. And I think his attitude, which is kind of abrasive, is perfect for that New York market because you almost have to be abrasive to survive in New York City.
Absolutely.
And he's got that going for him, regardless of what the owner is tweeting out during the middle of the game, which, by the way, don't do that.
No.
Don't tweet out in the middle of the game. Now, for number 4, from a large market to a small market, so I can annoy less. Number 4, I've got Joey Votto, because the Canadian is like one of the greatest Canadian players in history, second only to Larry Walker in most categories. Just had his 2000th career hit, just hit home run number 227 the other day. Quickly rising up the charts, the king of walks and on-base percentage. I know Les hates him, but he does have an MVP. And he's also the 7-time Tip O'Neill Award-winning baseball player. The Tip O'Neill Award goes to Canada's best baseball player. So I figure if it's an inspiration to Canada, might as well put him on the list. And he's having a great rebound year in 2021. Number 3, a guy who we kind of forget about, but is also on a really good roster, and the defending AL MVP, I believe, Jose Abreu from Cuba. A lot of people don't talk about him enough, I feel like, because he kind of started out on those really, really bad White Sox teams in the mid to late 2010s. But the guy can just mash the ball. He's a great guy to have in your lineup. And, I mean, with just the way he can club a ball, we saw that happen a few times. Even though we didn't get to see it in the Field of Dreams game, and I was sad because he would have really knocked one into the corn. I think Jose Abreu come October is going to be a guy you're doing everything in your power to get out because you do not want to face him in a sticky situation. And at number 2, of course, I have Shohei Ohtani, simply because he's going to suffer from the Mike Trout problem, which is the Angels have like 3 very good players and the rest of their roster is not good. As Anthony Fantano would say, they are not good. And this guy is going to win the AL MVP. There's a chance he's going to win the AL Cy Young. And just to do that in one season would be completely unprecedented. And it would just be amazing for baseball to see that. And at number 1, of course, Fernando Tatis Jr. It doesn't matter if he's playing right field or shortstop. The guy has an infectious personality. He's going to be a superstar. He is a superstar. And if the Padres, who, by the way, actually blew the wild card to the Reds this weekend, just saying, I'm enjoying this too much. I'm sorry. If he gets them into the playoffs and they do some damage, it will be an ascension unlike anything we have ever seen before for him. Now, as for my honorable mentions, to make you feel better, I would like to pay special respect to the old guard, the old guys who we grew up watching, who are still playing the game today. Mostly these 3 guys, Yadier Molina from Puerto Rico, because he is, and I know people always debate this, but he's a Hall of Famer to me. He is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Just because you don't like him or his stats, the guy was on several World Series teams. He's played for over a decade. He's accumulated a lot of stats. He is a Hall of Fame player. I'm sorry. Miguel Cabrera, who just hit career home run number 500 this weekend. And finally, Javi. I almost called him Javier Pujols. I don't know who that is, but what I meant to say was Albert Pujols, who is simply Albert Pujols. There's nothing else you could say. That's those seasons from 2004 to 2010, 11 were just some of the most amazing baseball seasons ever. He's an old man.
2001 to 2011.
I think of him more starting with the World Series stuff, but yeah,
well,
that's right. That's right.
That. His first 10 seasons out of the gate, he hit over 30 home runs and 100 RBIs, which is still a record to this day.
And he's really great. Yeah, I mean, he's just great, period. So those 3 guys are older, but they deserve an honorable mention in anybody's baseball list because those are 3 Hall of Fame guys with Hall of Fame stats who are, they're just amazing players. That's the bottom line. And, I'm even glad that Miguel Cabrera has a World Series, even if it's from the Marlins, because the guy just deserves to be a champion. That's it. So, yeah, that was my top 5. We had Javier Baez, Joey Votto, Jose Abreu, Shohei Ohtani, and Fernando Tatis Jr., with 3 of the old guard getting a special shout-out in Yadier Molina, Albert Pujols, and Miguel Cabrera.
I have a lot to say about your list, actually. I think there's a couple honorable mention of some young guys that were not mentioned that I feel like, you could have made a strong case for. And of course, maybe my personal favorite, Vladdy Jr.
Yeah, he's actually from Canada too. I didn't realize that until I was looking him up. Is that he was born in Montreal because, of course, that's where Vlad Guerrero Sr. was. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so help me God, you better not say Lars Nootbaar, or I'm going to come through the screen because he just played yesterday. Come on. He's only been around a week. He's not a superstar.
No,
He has a great.
I
That's a
love
great
Newt.
last name. That's a great last name, Nootbaar.
Newt. Yes, Newt. I'm loving. The more and more I'm seeing of him, the more I love me some Lars Nootbaar. I think they need to start bringing the Lars bars back in the candy aisle, but definitely showing my age on that one just because of Mr. Nootbaar. The Lars bar. That should be his actual nickname, Lars Bard.
I would love that. The Lars bar is up to bat.
Every time he hits a home run, that's another Lars bar. But no, it's funny because your 1 and 2, I feel like are pretty interchangeable because I love both players. Tatis is, I've followed him since he was in the minors. A buddy of mine, he's from Fort Wayne, goes to a lot of 10 Caps games, and that was the minor league program that Tatis was brought up in. And he was raving about this guy, how good he was way before he was pulled up to the Padres. And I checked him out, and while he was still in the minor leagues, and said, "Oh my gosh, this guy is just amazing." And I think he is one of the most exciting players in the game today. But Ohtani, at the same time, he's doing something we haven't seen since, baseball was diverse at all, since it was pretty much all white guys playing.
I mean, Babe Ruth, good player, but there's a reason why I don't think any baseball fans would argue that he is the super duper greatest of all time. And that's the fact that he just didn't play the best competition and all of the competition. So, but that's a debate for another time where we can talk about Pete Rose, Ichiro, and Babe Ruth. But that time will come.
We could have probably a whole on segment about just the competition levels of each generation. That'd make a good future episode.
Because that's why I don't really indulge in GOAT discussions in any sport that much, because with you really can't compare them. Because I mean, like I said, baseball's modern era starts in 1900. They didn't get integrated until the 1940s. I mean, hell, even basketball is so much more different than it was when Wilt Chamberlain played that there's no point in having a GOAT discussion because you just don't know. Everything was so different that you'll never know. You just won't.
Well, basketball, just look at how much different it's been this decade as to when I was growing up in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, the 04 Pistons would have been kicked out of the league by now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
they wouldn't win that. They wouldn't. I mean, their style of play just wouldn't fit in today's league.
No, they would get smoked because there'd be 5 wings out there shooting threes.
So Ben Wallace would have to guard the perimeter. Well, I wouldn't be as much worried about him guarding the perimeter as I would Rashid, believe it or not.
Ooh, that would be a problem, yes. But we digress.
But yes, back to your list though. I do want to shed some light on my little head shake with Joey Votto.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you where 90% of my disliking of Joey Votto comes from. He's a great player. He's a great player. Well, okay. 10% of it is that he plays for the Reds, and 90% of it is when he had his MVP season, how often I had to hear Reds fans tell me that he was better than Albert Pujols, and I'm just like, stop, cut it out right now.
I love Joey Votto. I love Joey Votto. He's probably my favorite baseball player ever because he plays for the Reds, but I'm also rational, and I know he should have 2 MVPs probably because of that weird young Carlos Stanton year where they went with home runs instead of other things, which I understand, but I don't think there was ever a season where he might have been, or even overall. I mean, I think both guys are going to end up in the Hall of Fame, but Joey Votto might wait a year. Albert Pujols is going to be 98% of the ballot. if that. I mean, you can't deny Albert Pujols is one of the great first basemen of all time. I don't know if they just meant that year, but I would not agree with that. I love Joey Votto, but I don't think he's better than Albert Pujols. Maybe right now because Albert Pujols is like 58 years old, but
Yeah, he's better
you
right
know,
now. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, like you said, Albert's aging.
not all time. No.
I mean, we're talking about an Albert Pujols, as I said, the only player in MLB history to hit 30 home run, to bat 300, hit 30 home runs, and 100 RBIs in a season for 10 consecutive years. No other player in baseball has done that, and he did it his first 10 years in the league.
Not to mention the MVPs and World Series stuff. I mean, yeah, I love Joey Votto. I don't think he's better than Albert Pujols, except maybe like towards the back end of the Pujols career, but currently, but not all time. No.
Prime Pujols versus Prime Votto, it's not comparable at all. And also one of my favorite Pujols moments is in the 2005 NLCS where he took Brad Lidge deep to win the game, and it ruined Brad Lidge's career.
That was he really did ruin Brad Lidge's career. It's kind of sad. Poor Brad Lidge.
At the time, Brad Lidge was one of the up and coming closers in the game. He was just this young stud that was like a lights out closer that the Astros had, and then all of a sudden Pujols takes him deep and just was never the same after that.
Never the same guy, no. And now the Astros are in the AL.
Yeah, I know they had to switch divisions.
Pujols caused
that. That's right. That just goes to show you how great Albert Pujols is. He made a team switch divisions.
Well, do you think we've said all we can say on our trip around the world? Have we made it around the world in 80 days, or?
I think we actually made it in about 75. I think we made great time.
I think we did too.
So, oh man, it was a great. I enjoyed it though. This is a lot. This is a very fun. I know Bean actually is probably getting close, ready for us to stop talking.
Yes, Bean has been anticipating me shutting up for years. Goodbye, Bean. I'll shut up now. I promise.
All right, but that's going to conclude this episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. As always, like and subscribe to the channel and comment in the comment section below what you liked, what you didn't like. But until tell Matt he's pretty. It makes him feel good. And also don't forget that Godzilla is the king of the monsters. You do not ever forget that. But until next time, me and Matt are out.
Bye.